Hello there guys, it's Ebird Online and I'm here with the first of my roundup reviews for 90 Day Fiance, and this is the final episode, so what I'm going to be doing is something a little different. I'm going to be going over what happened in the final episode with each couple and then giving my analysis of the relationship and any problems that I think we have to look out for the future. So first up today, I'm going to be discussing Micheal and Juliana, and it just leaves for me to say thank you so much to all of those who have subscribed to me thus far. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet done so. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at mbird99. So Micheal and Juliana finally walk down the aisle. And we catch up with Juliana and she's still crying because she hasn't heard from her family. And I was really hoping this week that Micheal was going to have a massive surprise and that her mum and sister were going to turn up as a lovely surprise for Juliana. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. And so as Juliana walks down the aisle, Michael's like, wow, you look absolutely beautiful. And who's officiating this wedding? Well, it's Sarah, of course. Who else but your ex-wife would officiate your new wedding? And Sarah starts out by saying, you know, this is sort of an unusual setup, right? Like, it's not many ex-wives who officiate their ex-husband's wedding, right? Juliana said she loves my children, right? And my kids told me they loved her too, right? She's so sincere, right? So I couldn't be any happier, right? All of these wedding vows are gonna be about how everything pertains to me, right? And guys, Sarah talked on and made all of the wedding vows pretty much about her. And when she wasn't making it about her, she was making it about Max and Cece, who of course are important, but I just feel as if Sarah wanted to insert herself front and centre of this wedding. And so once the vows were said, Sarah then said, I'm happy to pronounce you wife and man, right? And as Micheal and Juliana were having their first kiss, Sarah was swaying drunkenly in the background. And I wouldn't mind if Sarah was just a little bit tipsy, or a bit worse for the wear, or even a tad sloshed. Sarah was 3 sheets to the wind. She was absolutely rat-arse. Why was that, Sarah? Inquiring minds would like to know. And Micheal tells us, we're moving on as a family. I couldn't be any happier than I am today. I'm glad we've finally got it done and we've got through all of our problems and we're moving on as a family. Micheal, as long as that family are not paupers from Brazil. As long as it's not that family, then yeah, I guess you are. And Sarah was tilting her head drunkenly to one side and acting super affected. And I even think the lack of Sarah's makeup and the fact she didn't bother to get her hair done and a chilled out dress code was all designed to push the narrative that she's absolutely cool with everything, right? If I look at everybody else at the wedding, they've made a little bit of effort, but the person that made the least effort was Sarah. I think she wants to avoid all comparisons with Juliana because obviously she'd certainly lose, and to that end I think she made no effort whatsoever. As for the wedding venue and marquee, it looked pretty nice. The marquee looked of good quality, but I couldn't help noticing lots of it was all open. And I definitely don't think there's £100,000 worth of wedding there. So the wedding scammers have come out of it with at least 50 grand as far as I'm concerned, but it was quite difficult for me to price, I must admit. And if you think about it logically, this was Sarah and Michael's wedding 2.0. Why do I say that? Because all of the friends and family that were there were all people that Sarah and Micheal obviously have known from their 20 years together. It looked as if they'd plucked Juliana out of nowhere and placed her in the middle of somebody else's wedding. Somebody else's friends, somebody else's family. And the worst thing about this is Juliana doesn't seem to be one bit cognizant of what's actually happening. And Juliana tells us, I'm really glad that at least somebody that we know is officiating the wedding and someone that Michael's known for many, many years. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this means, or what I think this means, a bit later in the video. But then, back to Bride 1.0, Sarah. And she tells us, everybody wanted me to be bitter, resentful, 42-year-old wife of a husband who's got a better model, right? That's not what it is, right? No, I'm quite sure it's not. Instead, we've got a bitter, resentful 48-year-old wife whose husband got a better model. You look significantly older than 42 years, my love. And there's a reason why you had to get so sozzled at what looks about 1 PM in the afternoon. That's a red flag. and there's a red flag flying over the top of Sarah's so-called happiness. And so now I'm going to round up this relationship and tell you what I think. There are many, many red flags. The red flag for Juliana is that she seems far more self-interested than I initially thought. She has no family and only 2 friends turn up. And they don't look like childhood friends. They were both friends that she'd met whilst modelling, and they were obviously model agents or that sort of thing. No childhood friends or even models that she knew from back in her past. And I will always have to look sideways at somebody who doesn't invite their mum, their sister, their nieces and nephews to their wedding. If there's another reason, such as they can't get visas, that's what we want to hear. We don't want to hear, oh, they might be jealous and they might just ask us for money. Julia, there's such a word as, no, we can help you when we can, but not at this point. I understand people are going to ask you for money because they think you're rich, but you just need to actually manage the situation and manage the scenario, rather than just saying, just in case you do that, I'm going to cut you off altogether. You're feeling sorry for yourself because they didn't call you on your wedding day, which is pretty bad as well, but they're probably very, very upset. You have to see things from other people's point of view. And I want to ask all my subscribers, how would you feel if one of your children didn't invite you to their wedding, no matter what the reason? I can understand if you wanted to do a drive-through wedding maybe at Vegas and it was just you and your husband or you and your wife and you wanted it to just be you two. But when you're inviting 50 or 60 other people from one side but nobody from your side, it's somewhat a kick in the teeth. And then we come to Sarah. Although she says she's fine with this whole scenario, and I don't think she's majorly massively upset, she definitely wants to put her stamp on this relationship and to really make it known, I can still control Michael as and when I want, and I still have lots of say in what's happening within their relationship, so much so that I officiate their wedding. She wants to prove to everybody that she's fine with things. But Sarah, why get so drunk? Sarah, why make all the wedding vows all about you, and all the speech before the wedding was all about how you see Juliana and your relationship to Juliana, not how nice Juliana is or how good Juliana is for Michael or how in love they are. You really made it as much about you and your kids as you possibly could, and you even went to pains to point out it's only when you decided that she could mother and parent your children that it actually happened. Before then, if it wasn't for you, it was never going to happen. And just a side note on this, Sarah's been talking on social media saying that she's been portrayed badly and that producers instructed her to say, you can't parent my kids. Sarah, if you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to do it. You're not being paid by the producers and you have nothing to gain or nothing to lose by just being yourself. If they did tell you what to say and you went along with it, it's only because you agreed. You don't seem like a particularly weak type of person to me. I think you were just unhappy because rather than people saying, yep, that's how I felt when my husband moved on, people were saying, how unreasonable. And worse than that, she's jealous. And when you were portrayed badly, you decided, let me put the blame on somebody else. And finally we come to Michael. To me, Michael is a toxic male. Michael wants a very young, very pretty wife who's not going to say boo to a goose. And he believes he's got that in Juliana. And Juliana's played the game thus far. And the only time she's really kicked up a fuss is when he wanted her to sign the prenup. And the only way she managed to wriggle out of that is by saying, right, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to go and model. I'll be independent. And that's the only time when Michael backed down. And I think Michael wants to estrange Juliana from her family and from her friends. He's somehow convinced her, if we invite your mum and your sister, they'll be really jealous because they'll look at the flowers and think that's how much they spend on a week's rent. Juliana puts her getting into limousines. Juliana puts her being on yachts on her IG. So if her family and friends were going to be jealous, they don't need to be actually there to be jealous. They just need to watch the TV or look online. So this doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense, Michael. He also wants her to have no independence, and having links to family and friends and having people to talk over any marital problems they might have will cause Michael to lose power over Juliana if she's got somebody else to talk to. So he doesn't want her to have strong links with her sister and her mum, because that would hinder him from being able to manipulate her in the future. Another modus operandi for a toxic male is someone who's a hypocrite. He tells us it's all about family and I'm glad we can all become one. Virtually actually forgetting the fact that 50% of the family, i.e. Juliana's family, is not there and is not seen to be part of the family by you. Michael belittles and distrusts Juliana. He tries to mention the prenup at the very last minute, and also when it looked like the K1 visa wasn't coming through, if you remember back, Michael said maybe Juliana's involved in crime. If she is, that's a red flag. Why even bring that up? The main reason that the K1 didn't go through was because of Julia's stamps in her passport and the way that you and Juliana met, and probably the massive age gap between the two of you. You ignore all of this and just try to offer up the reality that it's very possibly Juliana and some sort of criminal past that you didn't know about. And when Juliana used Michael's credit card and let Michael know that she'd bought a car for her sister, when Michael asked what's the car being used for and Juliana said a taxi, most people would have thought, actually I'm quite relieved at that. At least it wasn't something for you to just flex around in or show off in. It was something to actually help your family and make money. But Michael didn't seem one bit pleased. In fact, he seemed quite irked at that fact. He tries to paint himself as a good Samaritan, and he said when her sister was losing her hearing, he was the one who went out and got them hearing aids. And whilst this may have cost him up to a few £1,000s, I understand they're quite expensive in America, £5,000 or £6,000, this pales in significance when he tells us he spent £100,000, over £100,000, on trying to woo Juliana previously, and we saw him buy an awful, tasteless necklace for Juliana with very little thought. He let the jeweller just put any old gems in, and he filmed all this so we could see just how generous he was. But yet he's not generous enough to give Juliana what would have been a far better gift, the surprise of having her family there. And for this reason, I think that Michael is toxic. He's not a classic toxic person who tries to gaslight Juliana all the time. He does it gently and sneakily, but I still think he doesn't have Juliana's best interests at heart. He just wants Juliana for himself, and for him, Juliana's a possession. She's like a new pair of trainers, one of his fancy guitars, or one of his sports cars, or one of his £100,000 watches. She's something to have on his arm and make him look good to all the pals down at the golf club. I don't think that Michael is in this marriage for the right reasons, and I don't think he genuinely loves Juliana. But by the same token, even though I think Juliana loves Max and Cece and they in turn love her, the jury's still out on whether she is really in this for the right reasons. I think she does love Michael to an extent, but I think she's more in love with the lifestyle. But for all the smarts that I think Juliana's had over the season, she hasn't yet managed to clock that Michael is trying to estrange her from her friends and family, and that's a big problem. So guys, tell me what you think. Do you think this marriage is likely to last? And do you think that Michael is secretly a massive douchebag as I do? Juliana's only 21 and Michael's taking her youth for his own selfish ends. Let me know what you think in comments down below and stay tuned for my next video. I'm very interested in what comes out at the tell-all, and I really hope that they're asked about the family and friends issue and that we don't ignore this as if it's some sort of small side issue. If family's as important to Michael as he says, he's going to have to pull something great out of his back pocket to justify this decision. Please click that red button and subscribe to my channel, and please follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Ciao for now.